Hello, third graders. Welcome back to math. Today we're going to work on lesson 5-9, and we're going to work on using near squares as a multiplication fact strategy. But first, quick look card. So you're going to tell me what you saw and how you saw it. What did you see? I saw 3 rows of 3, and I know that 3 times 3 is 9. Let's try this one. What did you see? And how did you see it? I saw a group of 4 here, 2 groups of 4 at the top, and 2 groups of 4 at the bottom. So I saw 4 groups of 4, and I know that 4 times 4 is 16. Okay. We're going to work on our math message here. So, Callie knows 7 times 7 equals 49. How could she use 7 times 7 as a helper fact to figure out 8 times 7? Well, I want you to think about some things. If 7 times 7 represents 7 groups of 7, what does 8 times 7 represent? 8 times 7 represents 8 groups of 7. So if Callie knows that 7 times 7 equals 49, how can she find out 8 times 7? Well, she can start with 49 and add one more group of 7, because 49 is 7 groups of 7. 8 times 7 is 8 groups of 7. And 49 plus 7 is 56. So 8 times 7 equals 56. We are going to use problems like 7 times 7 today, and we call those square facts. Okay? And a square fact is when we have 2 factors that are the same, like 7 times 7, which is 49, or 5 times 5, 6 times 6, 2 times 2, and so on. So square problems are when both of the factors are exactly the same. I want you to get out your math journal, and I want you to turn to page 180 in your math journal and go get a colored pencil or a light colored crayon. Pause the video, get something to color lightly with, and then come back. All right, now that you're back with your light colored crayon or colored pencil, I am going to start covering up some square facts. So what I mean by that is 0 times 0. That's a square fact. I want you to shade that in. And 1 times 1. And 2 times 2. 3 times 3. 4 times 4. 5 times 5. 6 times 6. 7 times 7. 8 times 8. 9 times 9. And 10 times 10. Pause the video, shade in the square facts, and when you are finished shading them in, come back to the video. So what do you notice about the location of the multiplication squares, or the square facts on the chart? Well, the squares show diagonal. The squares form a diagonal because the 2 factors are the same. And both factors get larger by 1 as you go down the diagonal. So what I mean by that is there's 1 times 1, and 2 times 2, and 3 times 3. So each square is getting larger by 1 as I go down my diagonal line. All right, find 5 times 5 on your chart. There it is right here. Okay. And what facts are near or on either side of 5 times 5? Well, 4 times 5 and 6 times 5. I want you to trace those two facts just like I did. Outline 4 times 5 and 6 times 5. Find 6 times 6 on your chart. And again, I want you to identify, and we're going to outline the facts that are on either side of 6 times 6. I've got 5 times 6 and 7 times 6. What do you notice about the facts near the square problems? Well, they would also form a diagonal line. So the near facts, the near squares, we're going to call these near squares because they are near the square problem. So the near squares can also create diagonal lines. All right, I'm just going to erase those. They form diagonal lines on either side of the diagonal square line that we made with our square numbers. So what I want you to do for the rest of your problems here that you shaded in, I want you to outline what we call the near squares. And we call these the near squares because they are near our square problems. And remember, square problems are multiplication facts where both factors are the same number. So go ahead and trace those just like I'm doing. And you should have one on either side of your square number. And while you're doing that, you're going to notice that you are creating diagonal lines. We call these problems that you outlined near squares because they are near the multiplication square. So what I mean by that is if I have 7 times 7, that's a multiplication square. Near squares would be 6 times 7 or 8 times 7. And we're going to talk about how we can use our near squares to help us solve multiplication problems. So we're going to work on page 181, but make sure that you have the chart on page 180 handy. And we are going to add or subtract a group from a multiplication square to help solve each near square fact. So it says, we'll do number 1 together. And it says to use drawings, words, or numbers to explain your thinking. So if the near square fact that I needed to figure out was 3 times 4, what would be the multiplication square helper fact that I could use? Well, go to page 180, put your finger on 3 times 4, and what square numbers are nearby? Well, I've got 3 times 3 or 4 times 4. And when I say which ones are nearby, I mean which ones touch 3 times 4. So I could use 3 times 3 or I could use 4 times 4. Well, I'm choosing to use 3 times 3, and you can use that one too. So that's going to be my helper fact. And then I need to think about how I solved it. And this is where I can use words or I can use numbers. Well, how did I solve 3 times 4 using 3 times 3? Well, I know that 3 times 3 equals 9. And 3 times 4 is one more group of 3. So I'm going to add 3 to that. And I know that 9 plus 3 is 12. So that's telling me that 3 times 4 is 12. Let's do number 2 together. Near squares fact, 7 times 6. That's what we need to work on solving. So go to your chart on page 180 and touch 7 times 6. And what squares are nearby, meaning which 2 touch it? 6 times 6 and 7 times 7. Well, I'm going to use 6 times 6 because I know 6 times 6. And I know that 6 times 6 is 36. So how did I solve this? Well, I know that 6 times 6 equals 36. 7 times 6 is one more group of 6. So I'm going to add 6 to that. And I'm going to add 36 plus 6, which is 42. So 7 times 6 equals 42. Now, when you decide which square helper fact to use, it's totally up to you. There are 2. There's always going to be 2. And you pick the one that works best for you. And what that might mean is you pick the one that you know the answer to or that you can solve quickly. Finish 3 and 4. And then review page 182 where you're going to work on subtracting large numbers. So if I have 580, first I'm going to estimate that to 600 minus 400, and I'm going to get 200. Then I'm going to use this strategy, expand and trade, to help solve it. So when I have to expand and trade, that's going to be 500 plus 80 plus 0, and then 446 is 400 plus 40 plus 60. And then I'm going to subtract. Well, I can't do 0 minus 60, so I have to take away a group of 10. That's going to leave me 70 there. And I'm going to add that group of 10 over here, and that's going to be, oh, you know what, ladies and gentlemen, that's just 6. That's going to be 10. So 10 minus 4 is 6. 70 minus 40 is 30. 100 minus 400, or 500 minus 400 is 100. That's the expanded form. Put it together in standard form. My answer is 134. So I want you to do numbers 3 and 4. Use the examples in number 1 and number 2 to help you with that. And then work on your math boxes. And good luck.